I'm not fighting no more. Kelly, let me do my job. I just told you I didn't want to do no interviews, and you said you are going to do interviews. Now you told me to do interviews. Now you're trying to take me away from them. No. Let me show Dante's Boxing Nation some love.
You've been clear. The names you want are Manny Pacquiao, Errol Spence. How do you make that happen?
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Now, before Bob Arum answers that question, let's go ahead and get into today's news, and then we'll go back to how he answered that question. So we already knew that there was a feud between Bob Arum and Terence Crawford. We knew that Terence Crawford was actually telling Bob Arum, if you cannot deliver me the big fights, then I'm bouncing, I'm going somewhere else. This actually is the letter that Crawford had his attorneys send to Bob Arum. And you know when Terence Crawford is involved in his attorneys, he's serious. So that's why when I seen Terence Crawford and Bob Arum standing next to each other doing this interview, it looked like it was a very awkward situation, especially the way that Bob was looking at Crawford when Crawford was doing his interview. Now, I want you guys to understand this. Terence Crawford, he's been hearing from fans for years and years and years, and probably people close to him. Why are you staying with Top Rank? Why don't you go to Al Haymon, where all the top welterweights are? And no matter how many people told Terence Crawford this, he remained loyal to Bob Arum no matter what. Which is why it's so shocking that Bob Arum would say what he just recently said about Terence Crawford, the fighter that's considered pound for pound the best fighter in the world. Bob was asked the question, do you think you're going to be able to keep Terence Crawford? And this is what he said. He said, the question is, do we want to keep him? I could build a house in Beverly Hills on all of the money that I've lost on him in his last 3 fights. Let me just first start by saying this. Did you guys know that when Terence Crawford fought Jose Benavidez, it was the most viewed boxing match or MMA fight on broadcast or cable of the year in 2018? In fact, it was also reported that that Crawford fight was the most viewed fight. It was second most viewed fight on ESPN in the last 6 years, going all the way back to 2012. The only fight that did better numbers than Crawford was Pacquiao versus Jeff Horn. So this just proves that if you put Terence Crawford in there with marquee opponents, he will not only do good numbers, but he will most likely do the biggest numbers. And this is the reason why I've always believed that Bob Arum, he should have been working side by side with Al Haymon years ago, just like he works with Golden Boy. Matter of fact, I did an interview with Bob Arum about 4 or 5 years ago where we talked about Al Haymon and him working with Al Haymon for the betterment of the sport. And this is what he said. Check it out.
Now, the last question, Bob. It seems with Al Haymon in the PBC series, with them signing so many fighters, it seems like eventually it would be beneficial for you guys to collaborate and work together. Will that ever happen?
No. Okay, so you see what Bob Arum said back then. This is part of the reason why Terence Crawford does not have this huge selection of opponents that would generate even more views than Crawford got when he fought against Benavidez. You know, this whole situation with Bob Arum, it reminds me of the Floyd Mayweather situation when he was promoting Floyd. It also reminds me of the Guillermo Rigondeaux situation. Let's first start with Floyd Mayweather. When Bob Arum was promoting Floyd Mayweather, this was way before Floyd became a superstar. I remember it like it was yesterday. You had HBO along with Bob Arum. Nobody believed that Floyd Mayweather was going to be a star. Whenever Floyd Mayweather fought on HBO, Larry Merchant, he would criticize Floyd Mayweather for not getting the knockout. And then when Floyd Mayweather did get the knockout, then Larry Merchant, he would say, okay, he got the knockout, but look at the empty seats in the arena. Basically implying he's not a star and he's never going to be a star. Basically saying, yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're really talented, but we still don't like you and we ain't gonna never like you. Now, when it comes to Bob Arum, I remember Bob Arum, him telling the story that Floyd Mayweather, he seen this big, huge banner on the MGM Grand of Britney Spears, right? And Floyd was telling Bob Arum, why don't you put a big banner of me up there? And Bob, he told Floyd, because you're not as big as Britney Spears. And it's crazy how things work out. Because once Floyd Mayweather bought himself out of the contract, he became the biggest star in boxing. And MGM Grand, they put a banner of Floyd Mayweather up on that building year around. It was up there permanently. As long as Floyd Mayweather was still fighting, his banner remained on that building. In fact, even when Manny Pacquiao, who was fighting with Top Rank, he fought at the MGM Grand one year. And Bob Arum was complaining because the Floyd Mayweather banner was still on the building and it was way bigger than the Manny Pacquiao banner. The reason why I make that point is because Bob Arum may be in the same situation right now with Terence Crawford. He's talking about losing money and all that kind of stuff. Well, what if Terence Crawford, he buys himself out of this contract, doesn't even wait to October where the contract is supposed to expire? What if what if Al Heyman comes along and he buys Crawford out of that contract, and then they make Crawford versus Errol Spence, which is the biggest fight in boxing today? And that means that Bob Arum, he will lose out on all of that money he could have made if he would have remained loyal to Crawford like Crawford has remained loyal to him. Now, when it comes to Guillermo Rigondeaux, the reason why I said this situation kind of reminds me of that as well, you guys remember after Rigo put on a great performance, dominating Nonito Donaire. Donaire, who was considered pound for pound, top 3, one of the best fighters in the world at the time. He completely dominated him. The first round, he stood toe-to-toe with the much bigger Nonito Donaire. He broke his eye socket in the 12th round. And right after that fight, the guy that's paid to promote Guillermo Rigo and make him look better, he did the complete contrary. He said it was a boring performance. It was a horrible performance, and I don't know how I'm going to promote this guy. It was this boring performance. And it was just so out of place when he said it because it was a great performance. There was really no booze in the fight. The commentators that were calling the fight, they were talking about how exciting the fight was. So it doesn't make sense. I mean, if Bob Arum was going to call a performance boring, I would have expected him to say Lomachenko's performance against Teofimo Lopez was boring, if you're going to say a performance was boring. I would have expected him to say Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell was boring. So after Rigo gets his biggest win of his career, this is what his promoter says. After Terence Crawford knocks out Kell Brook, this is what Bob Arum says about Terence Crawford. Now, before I continue, let's go back to how Bob Arum answered that question that he was asked at the beginning of this video. Check it out.
Let me tell you something, and I mean this. Spence and Garcia are fighting December 5. If they really want to make a big pay-per-view, I'll put Terence Crawford in with both of them, one at a time, and he beat both of them the same night.
So you heard what Bob said right there. If Spence or Garcia, if they really want to make a big fight, put them in the ring with Terence Crawford. If they really want to make a big pay-per-view fight, put them in the ring with Terence Crawford. So Bob Arum, he knows that Terence Crawford has big star potential, because he wouldn't have said that if it weren't true. So I don't understand why Bob would say this and risk losing his most talented fighter on his roster. Understand something, guys. This is the reason why HBO went out of business. HBO Boxing went out of business. Because they kept putting all of their eggs in the hopeless basket. The thing was, they kept looking for a fighter to duplicate the same success that Floyd Mayweather had, but they wanted to make sure this time that fighter, he had the complexion for the protection. And that's where they went wrong. They had a Floyd Mayweather successor in Andre Ward, but they didn't care about him because he wasn't on the hope list. They wanted to make Gennady Golovkin the new Floyd Mayweather because they figured if this black man can be this big in the sport of boxing and so many people hate him, Imagine if we get someone with the right complexion that everyone loves. He'll probably be twice as successful as Floyd Mayweather was. And then they put Gennady Golovkin on pay-per-view with David Lemieux, and it completely bombs. And it bombed so poorly that the guy that was in charge at HBO, who decided to put that fight on pay-per-view, they actually fired him. See, if HBO was colorblind and they were really looking for the most talented fighter that they could possibly promote as the next big thing, they would have did that with Andre Ward, and they would have still possibly been in business. But even more importantly, they wouldn't have let Floyd Mayweather leave. They let Floyd Mayweather leave because they continued to disrespect him. They should have been treating Floyd like royalty because he was damn near paying all of the bills. Soon as Floyd Mayweather left, HBO had no more money to pay the bills. HBO was so sure that they were going to make Gennady Golovkin a star. They tried to throw Andre Ward to the wolves because Andre Ward had been calling out Golovkin for the longest. So HBO, they reach out, according to Andre Ward and his trainer. They admitted this, they revealed this. HBO reached out to Andre Ward and offered him a 3-fight deal to move up to a higher weight class and fight Sergey Kovalev. So while they ordered Andre Ward to take on this real tough challenge, meanwhile, they allowed Triple G to fight as many soft touches as possible. Only thing they cared about is protecting Golovkin from Ward and keeping him winning. If HBO was really smart, what they should have done is they should have forced Gennady Golovkin to fight Andre Ward, because that would catapult the winner of that fight to superstar status. And this is something people do not understand in the sport of boxing when it comes to networks and matchmakers and promoters. What they don't understand is in order to make a superstar, you have to put him in there with tough opponents. You can't just keep throwing fighters in there with soft touches and just think because he keeps winning, he's gonna all of a sudden become the biggest thing in boxing. When it came to Floyd Mayweather was beating the toughest guys way before he became a star. Floyd Mayweather fought Genaro Hernandez, Angel Manfredi, Philip Endo, Diego Corrales, Jose Luis Castillo, Jesus Chavez, Carlos Hernandez. And this was once again before he became a star. Not to mention all of the undefeated champions that were avoiding Floyd Mayweather because he was the boogeyman at that point. He was calling out undefeated, dangerous champions and undefeated fighters like Acelino Freitas, Joel Casamayor, Nassim Hamed, Shane Mosley, and the list goes on and on. That's how you become a star. You can't just keep winning and become a star and not fighting anyone. So when Terence Crawford has his own promoter talking like this, and he has a whole nother year to work with Bob Arum, this puts Terence Crawford in a very, very dangerous situation. I mean, when your own promoter is telling the boxing world that you'll be doing him a favor by leaving, you can't leave fast enough because he's losing money. If your promoter doesn't have your best interest, isn't that going to make you uncomfortable getting in the ring? If there's a fight that goes 12 rounds and you don't know how the decision is going to play out? I mean, that's a dangerous situation for Terence Crawford. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess my man Moses said it best. Let my people go. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So if you want to get this hookup for my brothers out there in the UK and Europe, make sure you check out the Scalp This on Instagram. And for my brothers out there in the States, make sure you go ahead and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. You know, I always say on this channel, pay-per-view fights should actually be free. And now the day has come where I'm about to hook you up with an app where you can watch all your pay-per-view events, boxing, UFC, etc. for free. I want to introduce Block TV, the best internet streaming television app out there. They provide over 3,600 channels, including HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, and Starz. They have a massive video on demand library with over 40,000 of the new release movies and the latest TV series. And it also includes DVR. So you're getting all of this for $34.99 a month. And once again, that includes free pay-per-view. So this one right here is a no-brainer, guys, because back in Las Vegas, I was paying damn near $200 a month for my cable. Those days are long gone now. So to get the app, make sure you guys go over to getblocktv.com and put in my promo code and get 30% off your first month. You also get a free month for every friend you refer. The promo code is DBNation.